Okay, yeah. Okay, the time has come to finish the bones. Let's see the rest of the bones. We have looked at the axial skeleton, the skull, the vertebral column, and the ribs. Axial skeleton. We have looked at the pectoral girdle and the upper limb, and now we're going to look at the pelvic girdle and the lower limb, and this is the rest of the appendicular skeleton. So here we go, appendicular skeleton. We start with the pelvic girdle. Unlike the pectoral girdle, the pelvic girdle makes an entire ring, and it has a lot of functions. One of its major functions is transferring weight from the spinal column onto the femur, okay? And that's a big job. We need strong bones to do that. And so we have this acetabulum, this deep cup, which is the socket for the hips, ball, and socket joint. We also have the sacroiliac joints here between the sacrum and this big part of the coxal bone known as the ilium. That has to be an incredibly strong joint because, again, it's transferring all the weight of the body from the sacrum to the coxal bone. Also, the pelvic girdle protects the pelvic organs. It gives us huge surfaces for attaching very powerful muscles. So that's a big part of what this whole thing does, is give us big places to attach very strong muscles. Actually, all along this bone is just endless muscle attachments. And I'll show you in Complete Anatomy how you can see that. There's a way to mark the bones to show you where the different muscles attach. That's one of the best features in the software, because when you're learning muscle attachments, you can use that, and it is awesome. But for now, let's just keep going. We start with the hip bones or coxal bones or os coxa, and these bones are interesting in that on each side you have one of these coxal bones, which is made by fusing three distinct bones. You have the ilium, notice one L, so it's I-L-I-U-M. You have the ischium or ischium, either pronunciation is fine. Ischium is what anatomy textbooks say, ischium is what everybody says, and the pubis. And when you first look at these bones, this is a complex bone. This is a hard bone to figure out at first. Which way is anterior? Which way is posterior? Which way is lateral? Which way is medial? It takes some time to figure this out, and what you should be able to do by the time we take the test is know whether you're looking at a right or a left, and which direction it's looking. And you will. Once you start looking your way around these bones and looking at the landmarks and memorizing the landmarks, it all starts to make sense, and it will start to make sense. So the ilium is the big one, and it is a site of attachment for lots of muscles. The ischium also is an attachment site for a lot of muscles. The acetabulum is the socket for the ball and socket joint. And the reason I bring this up now is that the acetabulum is where all three bones meet. Okay, and that will help you because it is a challenge for learning anatomy students to know where is the pubis, where is the ischium. And the answer you get by knowing part of where the pubis is and where the acetabulum is. If you know those things, you can kind of figure out what bone you're looking at any given time. So we start with the ilium. It's the biggest. It's it's all those things I mentioned. It has a crest where some bones are going to attach. It has 4 spines. So these are markings, again, of muscle attachment. It has the anterior, superior, and inferior iliac spines. So anterior, superior iliac spine, anterior, inferior iliac spine. And then it has a posterior, superior, posterior, inferior iliac spine. And again, these are all things you'll be able to see in Complete Anatomy a little better than you can here. This sciatic notch is where the sciatic nerve goes underneath, and the time has come for me to fire this up and show you, well, really show you how all this stuff goes together in context. So, this is one coxal bone. This is the pubis, the ischium, and the ilium, sacrum, vertebral column, femur. And here you can see the superior and inferior anterior iliac spines, and back here you can see superior, inferior, posterior iliac spines. I also want to turn on the nervous system so that you can see what that sciatic greater sciatic notch does. It allows basically the sciatic notch to come through. What else? What else do you need to see? You will come to appreciate these bones as you learn the muscles. Okay, let's keep going. On the posterior aspect, or not really posterior, I mean, yes, posterior, but if you look at it, this is a posterior view. You're not looking directly at the big surface. You're looking kind of diagonally. This is the view you have in this slide, where you're both lateral and posterior, right? Posterior, lateral, both lateral and posterior. This is what you see in the textbook. And what we're showing on this slide is the gluteal lines. These are where the gluteal muscles, the different gluteal muscles attach. So you have an anterior gluteal line, you have a posterior gluteal line, and you have an inferior gluteal line down here. So inferior, and then anterior and posterior. And what these lines are for is they help you see where the different gluteal muscles attach. And it turns out you have 3 different gluteal muscles. You have, I just add more muscles till we can see, more and more layers of muscles. This is gluteus minimus. This is going to mostly rotate your, this is going to do a medial rotation of your hip joint. That's a big thing it's going to do. And then kind of over the top of it, superficial to it, and kind of blocking your view of it, is gluteus minimus. Gluteus medius. This is gluteus medius. And this is a major abductor of the thigh, major hip abductor. And then finally, gluteus maximus. More posteriorly, this is a huge, powerful hip extensor. So if we get rid of gluteus maximus, what we can see is that gluteus medius ends where the posterior gluteal line is, and gluteus maximus is going to attach all along the iliac crest up here. And then if we get rid of gluteus medius, we can see that gluteus minimus is defined by the anterior gluteal line and the inferior gluteal line. So it's going to attach between the anterior and inferior gluteal line. So if nothing else, this can help you remember that there are 3 gluteal muscles, and that's why they're named gluteal. Let's see. Okay, so then we move to the ischium. The ischium has, I guess, 3 markings we're going to really care about. It has the ischial tuberosity, which is very close to what you sit on. Your sitting bone is part of the ischium. Your ischial tuberosity is what some of the strongest muscles in the leg are going to attach to, or the strongest lower limb muscles are going to attach to. Also, the ischial spine. This is going to come up later when we look at male versus female pelvis. The ischial spine has a big role in that. Finally, the pubis. The pubis has, well, it has a couple different markings. You have diagrams in your lab manual. That's a good thing to look at, and that also tells you how much detail you need. One thing to remember about the pubis is that it's where the pubic symphysis attaches, close to the pubic tubercle. So let's get rid of muscles, but let's add connective tissue. Let's see if this works. Oh, come on, give me a symphysis. Nope, that's just not how it works. Okay, that's the pubic symphysis. And it attaches the two pubic bones. So the pubic bones are going to be, well, it's going to end here. It's going to go from here to here, where it becomes ischium. And it's going to go from here to here, where it meets the ilium and the ischium. So this is all pubis. Half of this is pubis. So the key is figure out where the pubic symphysis would go. Then you know that that's pubis. And remember that all three bones meet in the acetabulum, where the femur goes. So everything between here and here is pubis. And then you'll figure out that somewhere in here is where the pubis and the ischium meet. Here you see a ramus. A ramus is going to be sort of, I have no idea how to describe that, but this whole thing would be a ramus. The pubis has a superior pubic ramus and an inferior pubic ramus. So these things you could grab are rami. And then the majority of the pubis, where it's going to attach to the symphysis, is the pubic body. The obturator foramen is this huge hole in the, you can see down here. It's the biggest foramen, I believe, that you would see in a bone. Obturator foramen, huge. What goes through this? Not anything. Oddly enough, what this really is an empty space to be lightweight. And you have two obturator muscles that are going to attach around the outside. One, the external one, and one, the internal one, or external versus internal. And those are muscles that are going to laterally rotate your hip. And so they're going to attach like here. And they prevent anything from going through the obturator foramen. No, seriously, I need to show you this because, like, how are you going to believe me? So, this is one of the obturator muscles, okay? And if I add more, I've added now obturator internus also, which we can't even get at because there's so many other things. Yeah, obturator internus here. And so, between those two muscles, they reach around and grab the femur, and they're going to do lateral rotation by contracting here. And they block off the obturator foramen completely. Okay, and then once you put the whole pelvis together, you get some other markings that are important. You get the pubic arch. This is the angle made by these bones, and if we look here and we turn off the muscles, the pubic arch is this angle you could measure, okay? This angle. And that's important because that's one of the best ways to distinguish between a male and female pelvis. So, a female pelvis, if I can turn that on here, a female pelvis is going to have this angle be about 90 degrees. So it's going to be about a right angle. I don't know if I can show you that, but yeah, that's about a right angle, 90 degrees. And right away, hopefully you can see that it's different from a male pelvis. If we go back and look at the male pelvis, so this is all male. This is higher, and this is a sharper angle. It's like 50 degrees or 60 degrees, not 90 degrees. And that's one of the ways you can tell male from female. That's the pubic arch. Also, the pubic brim. This is the first thing a baby's head has to be forced through on its way out of the body during childbirth. And In a male, it wouldn't work because there's not a big enough hole. The coccyx gets in the way, and these ischial spines would get in the way. But still, we have this marking, a pelvic brim. It makes more sense to look at it on a female. That's what it looks like on a female. So the coccyx still is going to kind of limit the size, but the ischial spines are much farther out of the way, and there's just a much bigger opening in a female, along with that much wider pubic arch. But so basically there are two kind of pinch points a baby's head has to get past. The first one is the pelvic inlet or pelvic brim, which is kind of this line here. It goes from the sacral promontory to this iliopectineal line, and then the pubic symphysis and the pubic tubercles all the way back around. That is the narrowest point that a baby's head has to get through. And then as soon as it gets past that, it's a little bit wider, and then it has to get past the pelvic outlet, which is defined by this, and the same things. So the pelvic outlet, so like there's this space inside the true pelvis, and to get into it, you have to get past the pelvic brim. Then you're in the pelvic space, and then to get out, have to get past these. So this is a marking. The pelvic part of the pelvic brim is a marking that doesn't really make sense when you see it on just one bone. But if we go back, if we go back here, the ilium has the arcuate line, and there's a pectineal line of the pubis. Well, that's the arcuate line and the pectineal line. The iliopectineal line is what they are together, and that shows the pelvic brim. So the pelvic brim is that inlet that I was showing you. And it is limited. I just tried to rotate this. It is limited by where that iliopectineal line is and the sacral promontory. So the sacral promontory sticks out and tries to block the baby's head a little bit. On a male, it would stick out even farther. Okay, so while we're looking at a pelvis, this brings up the idea of the false pelvis and the true pelvis. The true pelvis is that bowl between the pelvic inlet and outlet. So once a baby's head gets past the pelvic inlet, it's in the true pelvis and there's more space. Of course, there is no space. The pelvis is already full of things like the bladder and the rectum and the ovaries. And so during childbirth, these two things get squashed kind of severely, as do blood vessels and nerves. And then the false pelvis is going to be what's determined by the iliac bones, or the ilia. And so it's not really pelvic, it's abdominal. Part of the small intestine and large intestine are going to be there. So if this is one of the coxal bones, down here is the true pelvis in orange, and the false pelvis would be up here. And so down here is the true pelvis, and up here is the false pelvis. So if I were to show you this on a male, just to be able to see more of the body, I can show you the organs. So digestive organs, for the most part, are going to be in the false pelvis. Just the rectum is going to be in the true pelvis. Get rid of that. Sorry, that might have been a bit shocking if you're new to anatomy, but there are lots of weird colors we get when we cut into a person. Let's see, the urogenital, the urinary bladder would be there in a male or female. In a female, there would also be the uterus and the ovaries. So this space is pretty much filled up. Okay, let's get back to this. Let's keep going. Here you see a better description of the pelvic inlet and outlet. I won't test you on the markings that make up the pelvic inlet and outlet, I will test you on what is the meaning of pelvic inlet, what is the meaning of pelvic outlet. And also, I will test you on the difference between a male and female pelvis. I'll ask you, how do you tell the difference? What 3 things could you look at that would help you tell the difference? Unfortunately, you cannot just go back and forth in complete anatomy between male and female pelvis. As you just saw, I can't just click and immediately go back and forth. But here you can see 2 of them next to each other, and it starts to show the differences. There are so many of them. One thing you could do, I was going to say, look at the person sitting next to you. No, you don't do that. One thing you could do is you could share your screen when you're working with your team and go back and forth between 2 people with 2 different pelvises. And working together is going to be your best bet anyway. Okay. And then from a lateral view, you can see the sacrum and the coccyx are much farther back in a female than they are in a male. Yeah, and here you can see the much wider path through the pelvis, female versus male. Okay, I've been talking too long. Let's stop this video, and then we will get into the lower limb, and that will be the end of the bones.